All right, about a 1 minute away from starting. I'm still getting used to this live stream stuff. It always seems like I'm getting cut off, and then I take a look at the replay, and the replay always seems to play right through. I know it cuts in and out a little bit, but you know, what are you going to do? Okay, it says waiting for live stream. Okay, it should be starting at any second. It says here that I've been going for 20 seconds, so we'll see. Oh, hey Stephanie, you can see me? That may or may not be to your advantage, I don't know. This old dude's getting older. His hair's all whacked out. As a matter of fact, it's embarrassing. You know, since I'm writing that book, I'm writing another book that is actually due on Friday, which is why I had to kind of stop answering, hey Samuel, which is why I had to stop answering so many texts yesterday. I wrote 25 pages yesterday. I constructed, I think it was 20 tables. So today between class, Aguilay, how are you? Between classes, then tonight I'll write another 25 pages in trying to get this done. So if you're taking a look at my hair, you notice my hair's kind of whack. It's because hey Marianne, I just don't have time to get it cut. And I was talking to Maria, who I guess isn't on yet, but I was talking to Maria earlier. Hey Marianne, and she was saying that evidently last week's video lasted for 29 seconds. I took a look at it and I had, if Death Had a Face, Samuel, this isn't that class. This is social problems. Death Had a Face is human behavior. But okay, you don't upload it. Let me just actually, this question will be good for everyone, Samuel. So thanks for joining in. And I didn't want to get to business yet, but I'll get to business. I'm doing great. I'll be glad when this book is done. I'll tell you what, I'm spending like 10 hours a day trying to write this thing. It'll be about 150 pages. As a matter of fact, if you go take a look at how to write a great paper, that's how I can write 25 to 50 pages a day, is I just use the very structure that I'm giving you. Okay, this is really for everyone. And Samuel, you've actually asked a very good question. I don't know how to create Dropboxes. I don't know how to put the assignments into Blackboard. I'm sure I could learn it. However, I'm more interested in writing books. I'm more interested in doing professional coaching. You know, I'm more interested in helping people get out of their darkness and help them elevate to a brighter day. So I spend a lot of time doing that. I do financial planning. Right, so I do financial services. And if your parents ever need any help, I'll be glad to. Hey, Cheryl. Okay, but here's what I want you to do. It's real simple. Either I would like for you to submit your paper as an attachment within the course messages. All right, that's the number one way that I'd like for you to do that, Samuel, is send it as an attachment within the course messages. That way when I go to grade it, hey Maria, nice seeing you again. That way when I go to grade it, it's already there. All right. Alternatively, I know some of us are not used to Blackboard. I'm not a big fan of online. I like it. Right now I'm actually trying to grow comfortable with it so that this fall I'll be able to use it to my advantage. However, the second way that I'd like for you to do it is I'd like for you to submit it as an email attachment, and you can send it to sean.hopeworks@gmail.com. Right here, I'll write that down. Look at that. Don't tell me I'm not learning something. Sean@hopeworks@gmail.com. Even though that's for my business, you are my business. At the end of the day, you know, I don't think I told you how long I've been teaching. As a matter of fact, you may not have heard it because the live stream cut off. But this is I started teaching in 1987 in the fall. So I'm going on to my 33 years of teaching. And I've had 18 to 20,000 students. And the one thing that I really like is the fact that I get to maintain this relationship with you all. I kind of wish this had been around. Maria and I were having a conversation here before class on the phone. And by the way, I do want to talk to you all on the phone. Right? That's something that I think is really invaluable. As a matter of fact, I'm thinking about changing some of the assignments around because we have a 5-week class. You have 2 major assignments and 3 not so major assignments. Maybe I can make some alterations on that, and I'll consider that. But one of the things I'm thinking about doing is, since all I see are some names running down the middle of my screen, I was thinking about maybe doing a Zoom call with each of you and maybe giving an auditory or oral exam where we can talk through what you've learned or something like that. And I'm thinking through how I want to do that, but I think that'd be kind of fair. Oh, good, Marianne. Am I on it? Did you put me on the WhatsApp group to stay in touch? because actually I found that to be very effective, and I'll take a look at that after class. I was never a WhatsApp guy because I'm not a technology guy, right? You know, I'm the kind of guy I like to sit back and I like to talk to you face to face. I like to be in the classroom. I like to crack a lot of jokes. I get all serious on camera. Back when I used to do like TV interviews on street gangs and street gang related homicide back in Louisville, Kentucky, it used to be that I got used to being on camera, but I was a lot more serious than I am in real life. In real life, you know, I just like to joke around and stuff like that. But in any case, I'm trying to learn this, but I have learned that WhatsApp is, I don't see the link either, but that's okay. WhatsApp is very effective in the classroom setting. So for me, I like the texting part. Now yesterday, some of you texted, okay, over the weekend. I'm getting like 150 text messages and emails every day, maybe 100. And I had to sit down and work on that book because that book's going to take some time. So while I was working on that, I just took Sunday off and I come back around to it. Keep working on that link. So based upon that, I'm trying to, you know, find some new things that I can do. One of the interesting things that, let's see. Oh, thanks, Marion. Okay. I'll take a look at that in a little bit. But one of the things I'm trying to do is integrate technology into my everyday life. When I invest in the stock market, one of the things, the way I made a lot of money in the last 3 years was, so I took a look at what technology was going to replace me as a teacher. Hey, good morning, Michelle. And when I realized that artificial intelligence was going to replace me as a professor someday, I said, well, let me go ahead and invest in the very thing that's going to be my demise. Wealthy people do it. They like to seemingly, and we'll talk about this here in a little bit, seemingly be in control of how we live our lives on an everyday basis. Given that, you know, let me invest in what the wealthy would invest in to control me. And in doing so, I've actually started making quite a bit of money. Just a couple things in terms of house cleaning, right? The first thing, I know I watch these videos and I see I'm always wiping my nose. There's nothing wrong with my nose. I don't have the coronavirus or anything, but I have this nervous tick where I'm always hitting my nose or hitting my ear or something like that. So, you know, forgive me for such a thing. But in any case, I went to Blackboard today, and I noticed that no one had submitted the assignment that was due yesterday. And that's okay. I'm not the type, I'm not going to worry about that. My goodness. There's real things to worry about that. We got coronavirus coming back on the rise. We have protests taking place all over the nation. I don't know if we want to use the word riots or we want to use the word rebellion, because if you think about the difference between the use of the word riot and the use of the word rebellion, it has a huge connotation, right? If we believe that nothing exists and everything is socially constructed, right? And what that means is that we have to come up with a common definition to make sense out of events. And the definition that we come up with is going to basically influence how we interpret behavior. So, if we think that what's going on around the nation is rioting behavior, right, that would assume that is chaos, that is anarchy, and basically that there's no set plan, there's no kind of forethought or what have you. But if you look at it as rebellion, that would certainly represent this idea that people have considered their stream of consciousness, they've considered their line of thought, and that they're actually acting in a rational manner. In other words, they are questioning the very power structure that keeps us under control. So, is it chaotic? Is it non-rational? Or is it something that's rational and thought out? The position you take is going to have an impact on the way in which we interpret what's taking place in the United States. I ride the bus, man. I got on the bus. I'm afraid there's a coronavirus incubator, but I have my little Ohio State mask on. And I'll tell you what, I'm witnessing things changing before our very eyes. I feel some racial tension that I haven't felt probably since Rodney King, which is what, 1992, 1993, where African-American male got beaten by a baton 63 times. And it was the first time it was actually caught on camera, because you know the legend is that African Americans are disproportionately the recipient of brutality, excessive force, etc. But a lot of that was in storytelling. But it was the first time back then in 1992 that it was actually caught on camera. And if you go back, and here we go. We're going to start talking now. Okay. If you remember the Who Am I exercise, I hope you watched the video. All right. If you remember listing who am I, and then you put it in that chart, right, The institutions up top is what creates the context. So if we take the economic institution, the political institution, if we take the education institution, family institution, media institution, those institutions are designed to meet our basic human needs. When they work together, they create this thing called society, right? So society creates the context in which we interact. Boom. That's the first thing. But the context, or society, creates for us the opportunity structure. From the opportunity structure emerge our social networks. From social networks, which are broad, right? You don't know everybody in your social network. And then, because they're extensive, like if you know me personally, then you have access to all the people I know. You're one handshake away, right? So if you're one handshake away, that's part of your extended network. For example, I am one handshake away from Barack Obama and Donald Trump. And simply the reason is because my best friend, when I went to high school, his sister's name was Michelle, right? And Michelle ended up going to Harvard. She went to the JFK School of Public Policy. Eric went to Columbia University. Mark, who was in our carpool, he went to Colgate. His brother Pete, he went to Dartmouth. And no, Mark went to Dartmouth. Pete went to Colgate, and Ted went to Colgate. Right? If you take a look at my carpool, Eric is the top real estate attorney in the state of Colorado. Brian, who I didn't mention, he had his own variety TV show in South Korea. Mark is the top civil engineer in the state of New Jersey. Ted became the Attorney General for the state of Illinois. Hey, Annette. And Michelle was hired in the Washington, D.C. school system as the first non-African American superintendent of schools in 2009. And what she did is she came in and just cleaned house. Right? She was on the cover of Time magazine. And what's interesting about Michelle is that she was invited by Barack Obama when he was elected president to be Secretary of Education. She turned him down. Then when Trump was elected president, Trump invited her to be the Secretary of Education. And again, she turned it down. Right? So I take a look at the nature of my relationships. So I can call Michelle right now. As a matter of fact, Michelle's trying to get my book, Dear Mama, to Oprah so that we can turn it into a movie. Too late, Michelle, because I've already been given an offer to construct a movie script for Dear Mama. And as soon as it's done, I've been offered $750,000 for the rights, which I need to sit down and write that thing, right? But I got so many things going on. But in any case, what that means is if I'm connected to Michelle and she's connected to Barack Obama, I'm one handshake away, right? So what that does is that means your social networks embed you into the societal system. And then from in there, Michelle is part of my small group network, my small group influence on who I am. So if you start at society, I got to get used to this camera. You start at society, creates the opportunities, network, small group, then you, right? So what that is an institutional analysis. So if we're looking at an institutional analysis of behavior, then what we would say is that if you take a look at history that frames the context, and you take a look at Rodney King in 1992, you won't remember because most of you weren't born yet. But at that time, we were having major debates politically as to whether or not we should maintain a crime control model of policing that goes way back to the 1920s. Well, again, 1960s is really when that picked up. Or should we go to community policing, right? Well, under a crime control model, we'll worry about that in a second, Marianne. Don't worry yourself over. We'll figure that out. What was I saying? So if we go back to that context, society was debating, do we maintain a crime control model which is zero tolerance? You engage in crossing the street, we're going to arrest you. You're wearing blue, we're going to arrest you for being a Crip. You're wearing red, look at this, I got all my red gear on, I got my little blood stuff on. So if I'm a blood and I'm standing with 4 or 5 other people on the corner, then I get arrested for loitering, right? That's a crime control model. Versus a community policing model, which is where the police try to ingratiate themselves into the community context and be a part of the system, rather than the enforcer of the system. And we're going to talk about this here in a little bit, right? So at that time, we were having debates as to which way we should go. When Rodney King gets beat down, viciously may I add, when he viciously gets beat down on, well, it wasn't live on national TV, but it came on national TV, and they played it every day, right? When it went down, people were angry. And As they got angrier, right, the call for community policing to get rid of this brutality started to really catch on. So the context, the historical context had to shift. The institutions were what they were, but the context in which people are operating changed. And when those police officers were acquitted, now I am worried, I'm going to tell you what I'm worried about. Right? When those police officers were acquitted in 1993, and all the rioting across the United States started breaking out, especially in Los Angeles, that was the tipping point. As Malcolm Gladwell calls it, when we hit that tipping point, it has to do with legal issues. What kind of legal issues are you facing? Right? So we take a look at our productivity. A lot of our productivity is based upon this idea that we're in social conflict. Where does it come from? These boundaries that divide us in terms of en masse by race, class, etc., and by the boundaries between one another. And the boundaries between you and I they're not inherently real. They're based upon our common sense perspective. And when we use our common sense perspective to create boundaries between one another, we got conflict. And we're not taught how to manage the conflict. Right? So, coming back to the current situation. When we take a look at the current situation, I look at it from an institutional level. I also look at it from this economic level. I'm an economic determinist. I basically believe that economic systems underlie the way in which we interact with one another. I just believe that. It could be political, right? I could be a socio-political thought. I could believe that religion is first, or whatever. I can, cultural belief systems. But I tend to believe that the economic system shapes all those other institutions, right? And is a predeterminant of what kind of outcomes are going to happen. That's me. I could be wrong, but it's kind of my view on it. So when I take a look at what's happening, right, I see this economic inequality between the haves and the have-nots. And those who have the most wealth have institutional power to create the laws that affect us. And what do most of the lawmakers have? Most of the lawmakers have an elite education. Most of them come from an elite institution, many of which came from an Ivy League school. Right? So you have persons from an Ivy League school creating laws that are going to affect persons in the inner city, the middle class areas, and they have an elite perspective on the law that they're creating. Right? The president, are you serious? Barack Obama went to Harvard, thank you very much. Right? Even Donald Trump went to Princeton. So you still have, Bill Clinton went to Georgetown, then I think he later went to Harvard for graduate school. Right? So when you're taking a look at who runs the country, you're talking about an educated elite who are passing laws that affect us everyday people who never went to such an institution. Right? How are you going to go to Harvard, create laws that are going to affect the people who live in Florida City? Right? The rate of poverty in Florida City, because I'm just part of this book, is 43%. Right? The dropout rate is 48%. High school dropout rate is 48%. Only 2% of the persons in Florida City have a bachelor's degree. So how is someone going to write a law that's going to affect the persons in Florida City when they don't understand the process that's taking place in Florida City, right? Or Homestead, or Opelika, or Liberty City, or Hialeah, or wherever you want to put it. It doesn't matter to me, right? Because what happens is that we are the ones living everyday life, you and me. And we're shaped by the context of the institutions. The institutions are controlled by human beings, right? Based upon power, wealth, perhaps, maybe not. We'll discuss that here in a little bit. But what I'm seeing is that those persons who are all economically marginalized, which is most of us, right? Because most people live within 2 paychecks away from losing everything, homelessness, right? So if most of us live 2 paychecks away, why isn't our education system teaching us how to manage our money first? Teach us how to construct a business. Teach us how to build our own personal team. Why? Because where do you go to work? 20%, what is it? 30% of the people who live in Homestead work in restaurants. How much are you making in a restaurant? 30% of the labor force. Right? So when we take a look at what a social problem is, 1, I think it's economics. I think that's our biggest problem. 2, I think it's education. I think education is a massive social problem. Right? 3, hate to me is a major problem. And as you read Dear Mama, tell you what, you better brace yourself, because that book, it's violent. And you're going to see, like you see me on this camera, I look a little washed out. I got to get some makeup or something on. I'm not vain, but dang, that's all right. You're going to see a lot of violence. And when it came to social problems, a lot of us experience social problems as personal ills, according to C. Wright Mills. C. Wright Mills wrote the book, The Sociological Imagination. He was one of my grandfathers in the academic food chain. C. Wright Mills made the argument that social problem is an issue that affects everyone. Right? Racism, just because I'm a white male who has a good income, doesn't mean racism doesn't affect me. Because when I'm on the bus, you know, all of a sudden I get pointed out. I got pointed out today getting on the bus, right? Guy doesn't know me, I don't know him. But as far as we know, we're the same, right? We both love our kids. We both want what's best for our kids. We're both doing our best to survive every single day. But when you see the exterior, we use stereotypes to construct definition of what's real from what's not real, we have these artificial and capricious boundaries that build around hatred. So what I'm seeing is that we have this economic manifestation that's taking place. We have this massive shift towards artificial intelligence and robotics, outsourcing and insourcing. But everyday people, we can't figure out why we're struggling. Why am I struggling? Is it because I'm a bad person? Or maybe I'm just a normal person, right? But what happens is we start to turn my struggle as a struggle that is antagonistic to your struggle. And every time we do that, we build this social distance. That social distance, as it grows, becomes more volatile and more dangerous. And here's what I believe. We are watching on the margins the fission, the division, how's that for a word? The division that could very well lead to a complete overhaul of our social system. And I'm not supporting or not supporting Donald Trump. But if you think about sending in or threatening to send in the military, right, or what have you, instead of coming in with a conflict resolution, finding grassroots leaders, empowering them to take the microphone and supporting what they say, right? When we instead say we're willing to send in the military, and we've done it before. You weren't alive in 72. I was alive in 72. Oh my God. Okay, I was 6 years old in 72. And in 1972, we had a lot of political unrest, right? Vietnam was taking place, civil rights was taking place. There were still all kinds of isms taking place. And there were student protests at Kent State University, which is not far from where I grew up. It's in the eastern part of Ohio, and I grew up in northwest Ohio. And the National Guard was brought in. And these students were protesting. They were handing flowers to the National Guard. Next thing you know, two college students just like yourself, get shot and killed on campus. And it reverberated around the nation. How can we, on the one hand, espouse freedom of speech, the ability to think critically and to question authority, but at the same time kill persons at gunpoint for doing the very things that you're supposed to do on the American Constitution? Right? How can we do that? Is the Constitution real, or is the Constitution something that is constructed? Is the law real? You haven't read the law. You don't know what the law is, right? But you act as if you know. But when you get arrested, the police officer has to say, oh, well, that's what they did. And then they go ahead and they overcharge you, knowing that it's going to get a plea bargain, it's going to get reduced back down to what the charge should have been. But oftentimes we don't know exactly what the charge is. That's a decision that the officer has to make, and they write it down. Then the prosecutor takes a look at what was written, right? And they say, yeah, that looks about right, okay. We have a case or we don't have a case, right? The prosecutor makes a decision whether or not there's enough evidence that we can go ahead and win this case. Then the judge makes their decisions, and now all of a sudden we start to see the interpretation of law. The prosecutor and the defense are going to have different interpretations of the exact same behavior. So if behavior in and of itself is something that is clearly defined, then you don't need a legal system. You don't need a legal institution at all. But the fact that attorneys battle each other in an adversarial system, so that one position comes out the winner over another position, that means the law doesn't exist, baby. Don't fool yourself. The law only exists in an interpretive process of individuals who process the facts against the law. So what does that mean? Everything is a process, right? Everything is a matter of trying to find your common sense perspective and finding evidence to support it. That's all it is. That's what social reality is, babe. The whole thing about social reality is, even in your love relationships, when you love somebody, man, you know, this online stuff, gosh, I met my last 2 girlfriends online. Isn't that crazy? I got to think that through. But I like looking in your eyes a little bit better. Face to face. But I just happened to meet them and we got to get along or whatever. But as you fall in love with somebody, aren't you looking for evidence to support the reason why you should love them? Instead of just flowing with it? You're looking for evidence. Well, they put the toothpaste cap on wrong. They snore when they sleep. They got corns on their feet. Their fingers are like this. Their breath stinks. All these different types of things. I don't like their style of dress. We look at all these things on the outside as evidence to somehow define what they are on the inside, and oftentimes what happens is people who should be our best friend, people who should be our love, end up being our enemy. Right? Why is that? Because we socially construct reality. We're constantly looking for data to support our common sense. When our common sense doesn't fit, we find data to reject it. And as long as we do that, we're always going to have social problems. Because we're always going to have hate. We may not define it as hate, but it is hate. Right? Because it's arbitrary and capricious interpretation of people who are different. And when that happens, we have inequality, structural inequality, where minority groups have higher levels of unemployment, have higher levels of high school dropout, have higher levels of diabetes, have higher levels of, whatever. And why is that? Is it inherent in race, or is it inherent in ethnicity, or is it inherent in the social system that is constructed based upon boundaries and common sense? Right? Hold on a second, I need to take another sip. And my chat's not working. Let me see if you're sending me any messages. Where are my glasses? I can't see this without some glasses on. No messages. Okay. I see some of you have emailed in your assignment. I appreciate that. So, where was I? Oh. So what that means is you can turn in your first paper tomorrow at 11:59 p.m. because I'm not holding you accountable for something that probably was my mistake. 2, I'm going to make a couple of adjustments with the syllabus moving forward. I don't know which way they're going to be, but they'll definitely be in your favor. It's not going to be more of a burden for you. One thing that I want to do for next Sunday, which is when your next paper is due. Whew, man, it's hot in here. I'll pull it off. Dang, look at that, oh my God, that dome is jacked, boy. I don't wear a hat in class, but man, with the light and stuff, I have it looks horrible having the reflection of light. Bald, it's one thing to be bald, but then to have the reflection, oh gosh, I feel like a freaking rearview mirror. But anyhow, what I'm thinking about doing for next Sunday is, rather than you just taking what you think from that list as the most important social problem, what I'd really like for you to do, because instead of me doing a live stream video on Wednesday, I'd like for you to use that time to watch an actual movie, all right? A real life movie. And then what I want you to do is I want you to pick the most important social problem in that movie, all right? And when you pick that most important social problem, for example, I love to watch the movie Freedom Riders. I use it in my class. I use it in Human Behavior. You can use it here, it's fine. But there's a million other movies. But as far as when I take a look at Freedom Riders, the number one there's 2 or 3 social problems. There's gun violence. That's a part of it. That's a social problem, right? Another social problem would be race relations, ethnicity relations, gender relations, education, social class. So when I watch that movie, there's several types of social problems that exist within that movie, right? So what I wouldn't mind you doing, and I think I'll articulate this on Billboard, thinking about music, I'm thinking about Prince. because his birthday was yesterday. I'm a little bit distraught about that. But what I'm thinking about doing on Blackboard is just kind of revising the assignment a little bit. You pick the most important movie from you pick the most important social problem from the movie, and you write about it. But here's what I want you to do. I know that I gave you some theories and some terminology that I wanted you to look up over the weekend. Now, you don't have to turn that in, all right? But as you get to the midterm exam, or let me rephrase, as you get to the term paper that's due next Sunday, which I'm not modifying, or the final exam that is due in week 5, right? You're going to have to integrate some of this terminology that you're looking up along the way. And so what I'm going to do is, I think that for next Sunday, I'm going to have you watch a movie, and then you're going to pick the theory that you think is best, right, to explain that movie. And you're going to pick one social problem. So, for example, in Freedom Riders, I picked gun violence. I picked gun violence as what I thought was the biggest social problem. And here's what you do. If you go back and watch How to Write a Great Paper, I think I put the link in your class today. If you watch that link again, all right, you will always want to start your paper with an introduction, have a background to the topic, and a background could be the trends in gun control, the trends in gun violence. What are the political pundits saying about firearms, whatever it is, right? So you have a background, excuse me. Then you put down your theory, right? And then you collect some data to support the theory. Then you have your analysis, and you draw conclusions. So you always want to have introduction, background, theory, data, analysis, conclusions. Every paper you write. So Maria, you and I were talking earlier. If you make that habit, and you put it in boldface headings, and you start the section. Introduction, then you write your introduction paragraph, as I informed how to do in How to Write a Great Paper. Then you put your background, however you take it. It could be literature background, here's what the research says, or it could be, here are the trends, whatever. You figure out what the background is pertinent to your paper. Then pick the proper theory, then you supply some data, systematic data to support or refute an evidence. Then you analyze it, and when you analyze it, what you're doing is you're taking the theory that you developed to interpret the data, right? Because, let me put on some glasses. Got all these wrinkles down here, man. God, now I'm going to show you a video of what I looked like when I was like in my 20s, man. You'll be like, but anyhow, so when we take a look at it, you're looking at this particular topic. You're framing it, you're using concepts, and those terms that I give you to look up, those are concepts, right? So you use your concepts to explain this particular topic. That's about it, right? Make it about 2 pages long, and it shouldn't be a horrible scenario to draw up 2 pages, right? And then, here's what I was trying to say. Because what you're doing at this point in time, and I wish we were live because I could really, there's certain things I can do in a live classroom to kind of address myths and stuff like that. But you all have beliefs that you come into this room with, into this class with, right? It still feels kind of like a room. You come to this class with certain kind of preconceived ideas about social problems. And what's the root of them? You might be right and you might be wrong. You're probably both. So what I want you to do is I want you to take a look at a theory. Conflict theory, functionalist theory, or symbolic interaction. I'll repeat them. Conflict theory, functionalism, and it's on your sheet so I don't have to worry about writing it out, or symbolic interaction, right? The theory that you choose, now the reason why we do theory is this. A theory has 3 purposes. I never know where this camera is. It has 3 purposes. 1, it helps us to understand a behavior or a pattern of behavior. 2, it helps us explain it, right? And 3, it helps us to interpret what we see. So let me just give you a quick, brief overview on theories that are that we have in this class. And next time, whenever that is, I guess next Monday, unless I call for you to have a brief meeting or a Zoom or something like that. Or if you have questions for me because you don't understand what you looked up, then you can text me and we can make a time to talk on the phone or Zoom or something like that. Because I would like to meet you all. I mean, if we were in class, we'd meet, we'd have our own handshake and stuff like that. By the way, If you ever see me in real life, you can do this. Put your 2 fingers down and just do like this, because it really means this. It means this, but it means this. My daughter, when she was 2, she used to try to be like her mom, and her mom would, kind of engage in little disputes when she was driving. She might throw the finger out there or something like that. So my daughter, who was 2, she couldn't do this. So she would do it like this. She'd put her 2 fingers down and she'd go like that. That was her way of doing it. So what I started doing, when I walk in the classroom, I say, hey everybody, good evening, good morning, and we do this. Next thing you know, everyone in class, when I walk in, they're doing like this. So if I ever meet you face to face and you do this, that means we're part of the same class. Kind of stupid, ridiculous, but actually it's not. Because what it does, using symbolic interactionism. Symbolic interactionism is a micro-perspective. And this micro-theory assumes that we socially construct what is real. We come up with alternate lines of behavior, alternate lines of interpretation, and we negotiate what is real.